was interviewed by then plant manager Barry McClellan, the plant manager from Coronac, Garner Mitchell, and I believe it was the chief operating engineer, Bob Swift at the time. So there was 3 in the room, plus the HR person from SaskPower. And my memory, why it sticks with me is because Bob Swift sat behind me in the interview process, and I thought that was a little odd, but the interview went for 2.5 hours.
Did you ever find out why he was sitting behind you?
You know, I asked him, but he never did have a good answer. He just said, well, that's where the chair was, so.
I'm just sitting in the reception and this big guy, he was big. If you know who he is, he's a big guy, and he walked by, work boots on, a jean jacket, hard hat on, goes in the plant manager's office, and I'm just thinking it's a mechanic or somebody going to see the plant manager. And next thing you know, Pat Wilford, the secretary, says, okay, you can go in now. And I go in the office, and this big guy's behind the desk, and this big paw of a hand comes out to shake hands. And here's the plant manager with work boots on and a hard hat on. And that's when I knew right then and there that this is where I want to work.
I was lucky enough to have a job in energy conservation as an energy conservation engineer. And what that entailed is I got the opportunity to drive around this province and meet with a lot of our small, medium customers and actually teach them how to use power. And even though that's a great opportunity, what made it special for me is when I actually got to talk to them and spend time and listen and hear their stories about SaskPower. Everybody has a relationship to SaskPower somehow in the community, whether it's a cousin, a friend, a parent. Everybody's connected to SaskPower somehow, and you hear their stories, and they're always such fond memories for them, for their families, and now for me.
Garner's presentations to the board were absolutely legendary. He would come into the room with a whole team of people behind him, and they would be rolling in the carts with binders, and they would have these presentations that were full of photos showing all these scary things that the whatever project he was hoping to get approved would fix. And these presentations were absolutely legendary. I've never seen anything like it since.
SaskPower was a household name. My grandfather worked there his entire career. In fact, he was in the same division. He worked in labor relations. There was a hat that I remember as a kid that I had that my grandpa brought home from work, and he gave my brother and I each one when I think I was 3 years old. It had a pom-pom on top, and it said SaskPower Corporation on it. Pulled the hat out last week, actually, in fact, for the customer golf tournament, and I wore this pom-pom hat. It was definitely a conversation piece, but yeah, I got to pull it out. My grandpa would have been proud.
I think it was Debbie Nielsen, who was the plant lady at the Shan greenhouse, and you could write and ask her questions about how to care for your plants. So we used to play a lot of jokes on each other, and I was surprised to one morning, people said, hey, look, your question got answered. What question? And it was ask the plant lady. It's like, hey, plant lady, is it true if you talk to your plants, they grow better? Grant Ring. And so, of course, nobody owned up to saying it, and her answer was very polite. It was, well, Grant, you know, there's not a lot of scientific proof if you talk to your plants, but if you like the plants, you just go right ahead and just be okay with it.
I met my wife at work. She worked at SaskPower, and I was working in North Battleford, and she had come in for an interview for a clerical position. And of course, in those days, you have to do a typing test to see if you're qualified. So she was typing outside my door at my office, and all of a sudden I hear this rattle. She was on a manual typewriter, and when she went to hit the carriage, it shot out and kind of landed in my office. So I went to pick it up and try to help her get it working again, but couldn't get it working, but so she passed anyways. But that's the first time I met her, and I guess, what, 4 or 5 years later, we got married.
Ryan Moore came to see me, and he needed help with the Meridian cogeneration project. I was in taxes at the time, and they had a tax issue with the province wanted to apply PST on on the purchase. We went over to the ministry and presented our case, and we were successful. A few years later, the deputy minister who I presented our case to became our CFO. His name was Bill Jones. I was working with Bill. I brought the story up and asked him if he remembers me and remembers me coming forward. And I think I was kind of fishing for a compliment from him on how well I did. And if you knew Bill Jones, he doesn't give out compliments very often. And he took off his glasses and he looked at me and he kind of laughed and he said, "Yeah, I remember you." He goes, "I remember you looked like you were in way over your head. And I felt sorry for you, so I gave you the win." So that's Bill Jones, and to me, a win's a win, so I'll take it.
What blew me away was they started off saying, okay, all those who are 25 years of service, I go, that's incredible, 25 years of service. All those with 30 years of service, and they kept going, 35, 40, 45, and my jaw kept dropping about the long lines of people and the loyalty. I love that SaskPower was recognizing people who had dedicated just so much of their life to SaskPower. So I was like, I love this place.
Well, I just want to say thank you to all the current employees, but also to all the past employees and retirees from SaskPower who spent so much of their life in and around Saskatchewan. Whatever community you worked in, whatever department you worked in, you made this happen. And here we are today, 90 years later. You should be very, very proud. So thank you, everybody.